Alright everybody, how's everybody doing out there? Who the hell is out there? Who's interested in guitar these days, huh? Who am I talking to? There's a bunch of old fogies like me. Is that who's out there? Anyway, I played these two selections here without ever even tuning the guitar. That's how well this thing stays in tune. And it's just a marvelous instrument. I'm very happy about finding an original blueprint of an early 60s Strat. I mean, I'm talking accurate here, all right? Accurate in every way. Placement of everything, placement of the bridge, obviously the shape of the body, the contours of the body, everything is very accurate, and it's as accurate as I can make it by hand. So this is the new model I'm very, very happy about, and it's called the ZS for Zachary Strat, because it's a Strat. And the way this whole project started, this whole the way this whole inspiration started is that I was inspired by a picture I saw on the internet. Just an unassuming picture that most people would just ignore and not even remember. But it just struck me. If you can recall the 80s, and if you're the 14-year-old in Waco, Texas, you're not going to be able to do this. Not that any 14-year-old is ever even interested in the guitar these days, but if you're an old fart, you can remember the 80s and how they would take Fender Strats, or they would take kit bodies, you know, pre-made bodies and necks, and then they would either hack a hole right here, or they would have them made like that so they could put humbuckers in it. So anyway, I saw this picture and it really, really brought back memories, and I loved it. I loved to look at that guitar. Now this picture had one of these Strat copies with two humbuckers in it, and it had a Floyd Rose. And it's like, oh man, there were thousands of guitars like that. Everybody had a guitar. I guess Eddie Van Halen wasn't the first guy to start this, but he made it. He definitely made it famous, right? He was such a hacker. I guess he started a whole trend, or maybe he didn't start it, but he did make it famous. And so this guitar was the definitive guitar that defined a whole genre of music, right? In the 80s, that metal stuff, and then they went into, you know, glam metal, big hair metal, and you know, of course they totally made it cheesy, but there's a certain cheesiness to these guitars, but at the same time, there's a lot of charm to them because it really defines an era in history. So I said, I gotta build a guitar like that. I mean, oh man, I love it, I love it, I love it. And so at the same time, I found the blueprint to the Stratocaster, the original Stratocaster, and I said, well, this is it, it's gotta be done. So here it is, and there's a lot of pictures on the website, and obviously I made some changes to it, because I had to make it into a Zachary guitar, but none of the essentials, shape or features or characteristics that also define, see, it's got to be exact in some ways, and then it can be modified in other ways to improve it, but not improve it in a way that it loses its character or its exactness. So it's a tricky thing to do. Now, I always thought that the neck joint here on a Fender Strat was terrible. I mean, it was no thought put into it. It's just a straight thing. It's very very crude, very industrial. So obviously I did some work in here, and it's taken down more on this side, so it's easier to reach the higher frets. I gave it, of course, a 24 fret neck, and of course I used my own tremolo that I always use. I use my own springs, my great setup here with 2 springs. I mean, I don't want to get into the technical aspects here because most of you guys are not on that side of the guitar, to quote John Mayer, who's a great player, by the way, but he's pretty fucked up. You know, he's got his blind spots, but what an abomination of a guitar he's got now with PRS. Oh my God. Oh, shame on you, John. Shame on you. You can do better. He's an intelligent guy. He's a very intelligent guy. He's a great player. He's a great talent. He looks good. He sings good. He's got everything going for him, right? But anyway, it's not about John. But, well, it's a little bit about John because he designed that guitar so that the tremolo rests on the body, so there's no way that you can pull up on it, and it's like you lose everything. I mean, John, it's like, you know, to put it in a context that you can understand, it's like buying a high-performance exotic sports car with an automatic transmission, you know, or even buying any car with an automatic transmission. That's supposed to be a performance car, or you want to have fun driving it. You lose all those wonderful aspects of the design. It'll simply not be available to you. So, I mean, as you could see in the video, I mean, this thing is a stunt machine. Absolutely. I mean, you could spend hours just doing all kinds of weird noises, and it's not even the content of your playing. It's enjoying that tone, enjoying that sound, enjoying what the guitar can do. You can get off just on the sonic potential. And that's what guitar playing is all about. it doesn't even have to do with your content on how good of a player you are, or how much of a jukebox player you are, where you can play any tune. You know, here's Van Halen, here's Black Sabbath, here's whatever. Okay, a top 40 type of jukebox guy. I mean, that's very impressive. But if you don't do that, that's fine. Just enjoy the tone. Enjoy what the instrument can do. And that's what I'm into. You get so much pleasure. You get pleasure out of it, the sonic pleasure. And that's why you need a guitar that has that potential. So getting a little bit more into the technical side of it, and I know I'm going to lose John Mayer because he's not on that side of the guitar, right, John? Anytime you want to give me a call, I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to set up a guitar like you wouldn't believe. All right, I'll teach you at least the basics. You know, I'll make you grow in your knowledge. But anyway, so a little bit technical here. Everything sits higher. The strings sit higher off the body on my ZS design. Stratocaster based, but everything, so that means that the tremolo is up higher and it can go back and down and back, you know, and you've got just so much more of a tool available to you, is what I'm trying to tell you. So enough of that. There's a lot of thought put into this. There's a lot of improvements done to this, which is not going to be apparent to the average John Mayer type of guy out there, which I understand most of you are. Okay, I understand that. But it's always been a dilemma for me, a frustration, a conflict within me, that if you don't understand what's going on here, you're not going to appreciate this guitar. So, in a way, I have to educate you. And I've been trying to do that for 21 years with limited success. Limited success. It's because if you're not going to understand what's going on, you're going to walk past my work. That's the problem. So education is the key. Education is always what I strive to do, but sometimes I have done it with a blunt weapon, and I knocked you over the fucking head over, you know, with information, and I bashed your brains out with this sledgehammer, and you know, I receive resistance when I do that. So it may not be the best method of doing it, but that's my style. So try to look past that. Try not to be offended, and try to learn. All right? Look at the content. All right? Because it's important that you're smart. The smarter you are, the more you're going to appreciate my work. The stupider you are, the more you're going to buy a PRS. All right? The John Mayer model. You should be ashamed of yourself, John. Absolutely ashamed of yourself. You know, you're better than that. You're absolutely better than that. Oh, breaks my heart. Now, the other topic I wanted to bring up is you've been noticing my latest guitars lately that have been so-called reliced. All right? And I don't think anybody gets what relicing is about. Or you might feel it inside, but you can't conceptualize it and you cannot articulate it. And some of you are probably ashamed of liking relic guitars, and you don't know quite why you do like it, but you like it, and you kind of keep it quiet. It's like nobody admits of going and eating at McDonald's, right? But a lot of people like doing that. So I can make them fancy. I can make them spotless. I can make them intricate. Or I can make them relic. Now, I used to be like most people, and when this relicing thing came out, I used to say, what kind of an asshole would buy a guitar that somebody artificially beats up for them? You know, what kind of idiot would do that? So I was the same way. However, I never had the problem that most of you have, because I was always making myself handcrafted guitars. And it has to do with your ability to psychologically and viscerally bond with an instrument. Okay? So I presume you're a human being. I presume that you're flawed in every fucking way. You're flawed physically. You're flawed psychologically. You're not symmetrical. And you're not made perfect. From the start, you're fucked up. Okay? So, psychologically, viscerally, something happens to you. In that if you pick something up that's perfect, that's symmetrical, that's flawless, that's very exact, without blemishes, without defects, physical defects that is, you will simply not be able to bond with it. It's an appliance at that point. It will not correspond, it'll not harmonize, it will not be congruent with your organic imperfection, which defines you, every single one of you. So this is exactly what started me off on making handmade guitars. Okay? As the story goes, through mail order, I bought myself a brand new PRS because of all the hype in 1985. Paid a lot of money for it, and I got this guitar, and I could never bond with it. And a lot of you have gone through the exact same experience, and you cannot define it. And somebody had come up to me and said, well, why don't you like playing that guitar? What's wrong with it? And I would say, nothing really. Well, obviously there's something wrong with it. Doesn't it stay in tune? Doesn't it play well? Well, you know, that may be a little factor, but that's not really the real reason. And I would say, in particular, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, is it not made? It's supposed to be the highest quality guitar in the world. What's going on here? And I say, well, yeah, it's well made. It's absolutely flawless. I mean, there's not a flaw in the finish. For some reason, I just don't like playing it. So I built my first guitar, and anything handmade is going to be variable. Now, all these CNC made, computer controlled machines, they program it in. Everything comes out to the thousandths of an inch. And it's extremely accurate, and it's extremely consistent, blah, 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 blah. And then they put a thick coat of BMW car paint, and I'm not joking, that's exactly what it is. I toured the PRS factory about 15 years ago now. And you know, they were really nice, and the guy that was taking me around, he was saying, you know, he was boasting about it. This is the same paint that BMW uses, and I go, oh my god, oh my god, I couldn't. I really had to hold back from puking, but I didn't want to, you know, offend him or anything like that. But you get a piece of plastic like that, made by a computer, and you've just spent $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, whatever, you know, private stock, insanely figured wood, and all this shit, and you get it home and you don't fucking like playing it, and what's going on? And how do vintage guitars differ from these fucking lifeless, sterile objects, guitar-looking objects? It's an inert object, what you have. And the problem is that you are not an inert object. This is what these mass producers cannot deliver to you. So in their pursuit of perfection and robotic manufacturing, they're giving you something that's absolutely synthetic. And you're not synthetic. So you can not ever relate to something that's synthetic. You may not know this. And that's why these instruments are perfect to hang on the wall or be put behind glass. But not for playing. Won't work. As much as you want to make yourself believe and deny it, it will not work. Just ask any of the great players. Just ask Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yes, a lot of these people are playing these guitars, I know, and a lot of them are great players, or good players, or they're whatever. Well, put it together. I know you can do it. They gotta pay him to do it. Pay him to do it. Big bucks. They gotta pay him to play that fucking synthetic shit. They get paid. It's a dirty job to play something that you really don't want to play. But if you get paid for it, you can tolerate it. Right? That's how endorsements work. They pay players to use their instruments. That's like paying a woman to have sex with you. There's a real similarity between the two. Can you draw the parallel? Just not right, is it? It's not authentic. It's gross. If it's not authentic, it's gross. Unless you realize that you're going to keep making the same mistake over and over again, you're going to buy these things and you will not receive satisfaction. You will not be fulfilled by something that's inert. And how do vintage guitars differ? Well, they're handmade. Vintage guitars were handmade. They were imperfect. And what does handmade, handcrafted, what does that mean? Think about it. Think about it now. Focus. What does that mean? Well, I mean, you may not like it, but your psyche will like it. Your indoctrination will like it. But viscerally you will like it. And you will bond with it. Because handcrafted means a few things. One is imperfection. Dirty word. And the other is also a very dirty word, which you have been indoctrinated to be repulsed by. And that word is inconsistent. Imperfect and inconsistent. Just like you, son of a bitch. Just like you. And that's why the guitar becomes you. Because it is like you. It's not a piece of fucking plastic. Which is every one of those guitars you see hanging in a fucking music store. Every single one of them. Piece of fucking plastic appliance. You might as well be looking at toasters on the shelf. And that's why it won't work. It won't work for Van Halen. It won't work for Stevie Ray Vaughan. It won't work for hundreds of other players which you have heard of. And that's why it won't work for you. Now there's your answer. Vintage guitars. All vintage guitars. Prior to 1965, when everything was going to hell, vintage guitars, they were flawed. Just like you, son of a bitch. Flawed just like you. You could see tool marks. Just like a handmade guitar. A vintage guitar. And guess what? You pick it up and it feels a part of you. So imperfection has to be part of the equation. Imperfection has to be introduced. So this thing is totally me. And if you had one, it would be totally you. I can guarantee it. You would absolutely bond with it. That's why, and you would never step into a music store, guitar shop ever again, because it would be nothing there for you. And you would say, ugh, this is disgusting. You'd pick them up, you'd say, this is disgusting. I mean, you know, everything is organic. It has to be organic. Something made by a computer with a thick coat of BMW plastic on it is not organic. And the problem is, you're organic. And the guitar's not. So it's fucking useless to you. No matter how high the quality is. Understand what I'm saying to you? Understand what I'm saying to you. Just don't even bother. Psychologically, within your whole organic being, it will not work. It will not work. okay? It will not work for you. And that's why I go even a step further and I relic these now. And you know, I'm being absolutely honest with you. I mean, that's the way I always am. And sometimes honesty is brutal and honesty hurts. But the way I'm honest with you now is to admit that I have a hard time playing a guitar that doesn't look like this. Now, it works beautifully. It's set up meticulously. It's set up like you're playing a cloud. It's heaven. considering vintage guitars. What is it about vintage guitars? The wood is old. Nah. I don't know. The pickups are old. No. They were made completely differently. Vintage guitars were made by people, not by fucking robots. Something that's made by a robot should be played by a robot. Are you a fucking robot? Yeah. You know what? It just kills me every time I want to choke the guy. PRS Paul Smith, the great shyster marketer, is actually telling you that he's making vintage inspired guitars with a fucking robot, with robotic computer programmed machines. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Get a brain, man. Get a brain. Identify a fucking bullshit artist when you see it. You can only make vintage guitars with the processes which they used. And they were handmade. They were imperfect and inconsistent. And that's why they feel different. And they were not coated with fucking a plastic condom. A lot of you poor bastards, you've never ever felt the wood of your guitar. Shame on you. You've never felt the wood of your guitar. You've only felt the thick plastic BMW car paint. And he has the guts. He's got no shame to call that a vintage inspired guitar that feels like a vintage guitar, supposed to sound like a vintage guitar. You gotta be kidding me. He should be tarred and feathered. And you're the idiot that believes that? Go and kick yourself right now. Go kick yourself right now. You need a kick for being a moron. So this is why to relic a guitar. Not to look cool, not to be a poser of any type. Not to put on this facade, how great of a player you are, and how many gigs you've played, how famous you are, and all this. None of this shit. It's to introduce imperfection. Something that an imperfect creation like yourself is able to make a connection with. It's the only thing you can make a connection with. So that's why you get vintage guitars. That's why you get handmade guitars. That's why you get relic guitars. And that's why a relic guitar will always feel many, many, many times, 100 times better to you. And the experience will be so much more satisfying. And that's a huge reason to relic a guitar. And there's a lot of work and there's a lot of artistry involved with relicing guitar. If you want to do it correctly, you want to do it right, you want to do it nicely, you want to do it artistically, you want to do it tastefully. But that's the reason to do it. And it's a huge reason. stale, lifeless, uninspiring. I mean, you've heard countless times how players say, "Don't clean my guitar. Don't you dare clean my guitar. I want it to be dirty." It's all to introduce that organic element to a musical instrument. That's what makes the instrument feel alive, as opposed to a toaster in your kitchen. Because without the imperfection in a guitar, what you have is nothing more than an appliance. Inanimate. I mean, a real good example of this is, if you recall, if you have been paying attention, it's Van Halen. He couldn't play a guitar that's so inorganic, you know, off the assembly line, perfect. No, he will sell you that stuff, but he couldn't play it. Because when he was with Peavey, what is the first thing he said when they showed him, "Okay, we've got your guitar"? And he said, "Nah, can you scratch it up for me? Can you dent it up, scratch it up for me, take the finish off here and there?" And I'm sure a lot of those people, you know, they're businessmen, they're not guitar players. He went, "What?" And that's the only way he could play it. Brand new guitar. He sent it back to the shop. Actually, he went back. I was reading. He went back and he used some of their sanders and stuff to make it more humanly acceptable, so he could bond with it and play it. He could relate to the instrument as a musical instrument. And then all these other people that are into playing vintage guitars. Sure, it's cool to have something that's old, it's got nostalgia, and it's, you know, from an era long gone, and it's historic and all this, but the reason they play it is because of this organic feel of vintage guitars. And of course, they're all scratched up, the paint is all off of it, blah, blah, blah. And it just makes them harmonious to the human being. Inanimate, lifeless, sterile. You can't play it. Hang it on your wall. That's all it's good for. That's what a lot of you do, right? And you can't figure out, why the hell can't I play this? I spent so much money on it. It's perfect. It's perfect. What's going on? It's perfect. What's going on? Well, that's what's going on. I know what's going on. But at the same time, it's extremely organic. I mean, this is a neck with just an oil on the wood. The oil soaks into the wood and it feels... It's a difference between making love to a plastic mannequin or to a real woman. Understand? You cannot bond with plastic. You cannot bond with something that's artificial. You cannot bond with something that's bland and something that's sterile, lifeless, inorganic. It doesn't matter how. The problem is that it's perfect. That's the problem. So I'm going to leave that with you for you to contemplate. You'll thank me later for the information. I must also point out that for those of you who are perceptive, you may have noticed that the neck of this guitar seems a little bit shorter. Well, that is because a Fender Stratocaster and almost all of its copies, its clones, is 25.5-inch scale length. This is shorter. This is only 25 inches, not 25.5. Now, if you don't know what scale length is, this may not mean anything to you. But scale length is the effective string length, the part that vibrates from the edge, from the inner edge of your nut to the point where it goes over the bridge saddle. In effect, it's the part of the string which vibrates. As simple as that. That's the scale length. The length of the string which vibrates. The part of the string which vibrates when you pluck the string. And that results in a shorter neck. Now, the interesting part of this guitar is the bridge is exactly in the same location in terms of specifications of a Strat, which is 25.5-inch scale. So therefore, instead of the bridge moving forward, the neck corresponds to the bridge location. So this brings, if the bridge is going to be in the same spot, it brings the neck in further towards the body because it's a shorter neck. So the reach to, let's say, the first position on the neck is closer to the player's body than on a regular Strat. So it's a shorter scale guitar than a Strat. And that gives it a slightly different feel. So this thing, if you pull out the tone knob, it puts both pickups in single coil mode, so the inside coils are active only. Both pickups in single coil mode, both pickups on. Neck, single coil. Bridge, single coil. Anyway, this guitar can do everything. It can go very metal. It can go jazzy. Or it can go So that's it for now, guys. Think about it. Think about some deeper things. Yeah. So I really enjoy making these. I get an inspiration and I make it. So had to relic all the parts. Of course, I hate fucking shiny things now. Oh man, I hate shiny things. So, all the electronics are all exposed. Just raw. Just raw, real, true. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Honest. Sincere. That's what everything should be about. And the more you know, the more you appreciate what I do. So I'm trying to educate. Trying to educate. That's what I'm doing. Be well. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Have fun.